Outside the door, you see, you wonder if there's a place there for you. You know the peace inside. You still you're searching for someone who understands the pain you've been through. For spirit waves and open arms, calling out your name, calling, welcome home, you are loved.
Okay, good morning. Good morning. And welcome to Unity. So if you're watching online, we welcome you and we appreciate your sharing your energy with us remotely, and we appreciate every person that is here because we are all energetic beings, right? Spiritual beings having a human experience, and so our energy all together creates this wonderful experience this morning that will never be repeated again. This is unique, our time together this morning. So we have a few announcements. And our announcements are, so Alice Cox, some of you may remember Alice. She lived in the house right behind Unity. She was one of the first people that came in the door when we were setting up our space here to find out what's this new group about. And she came for quite a while until she couldn't. So Alice is, they are having, her family, a celebration of life, July the 7th, 1 to 4 at Carling Heights Optimist Center. And if you'd like to put that in your calendar, we certainly, sure her family would appreciate the showing of support and appreciation for who she was. She was such a beautiful student in our classes. She had such wisdom, and really missed that. Yeah, so bless you, Alice. Okay, and so I have booked a really neat lady, Dr. Rima Bonario. So I took a class with Rima in Unity Hamilton maybe about a year ago. She works with Reverend Gary Simmons on what they call the Q effect, and she gave an excellent workshop, and she's going to be our speaker the Sunday, I think after this or before, I'm sorry, I can't remember, but she's going to be a Sunday speaker, and she's going to do this workshop on a Wednesday evening. And it's going to be from 6:30 to 9, the energetic mastery for living an aligned life. And hopefully all of you got a little piece of paper that described the workshop, and you'll come out and support that. Rima's living in California, so she just happens to be in the area for 2 weeks visiting family. And so we were able to book her to speak. So hopefully that will resonate with you. Okay, and the next one is Mexico. So today's the day that we're going to have our condo lottery draw, and some lucky person is going to win 2 weeks at a beautiful condo across from the water and $1,000 cash. So if you still haven't bought a ticket and you want to, or you want to maybe hedge your bet a bit by buying more tickets, then certainly you'll be able to do that after the service, and I believe the draw is at noon. Okay, so you are the light. So I've just come back from the Unity Convention, and my friend Linda said she felt love drunk. I love that expression, love drunk, because we reconnect with so many people, and we meet new people, and just being in that feeling of all of us coming together in unity, in oneness. So just for a moment, feel that. What would it feel like for you to be love drunk? To know that all the people in your life just, they love you. They appreciate you. we behold the Christ shining as you. And then picture the people in your life and send them love. And say to them, oh, I just love you. I love you so much. I appreciate you. I'm blessed by you. And I behold the Christ shining forth as you. If we could walk around in that kind of energy all the time, I think we would have that experience of feeling love drunk. Love drunk. Do you like that? Yeah. So just say that with me. I am love drunk. I'm love drunk. Yes. Okay, and so now we have a song. Thanks, Jim.
Lori noted at the end of ended our meditation today with all men and all women. So that isn't why we're doing this song, but it really fit well. I love it when a plan comes together.
Good morning, friends.
Good morning.
Unity's foundation is affirmative prayer. If you wish prayer for someone else or for yourself, you're invited to use our prayer box, which is up here on the front table. Put a first name only on a piece of paper and place it in the box. No need to explain the situation, as God is all-knowing. It will be prayed over here at Unity by our prayer angels for 30 days, and then sent on to Silent Unity for additional prayer. And remember that any time, day or night, we can call 1-800-NOW-PRAY to reach Silent Unity, where people have been praying with and for folks for over 130 years. If you wish private one-on-one prayer, we have a prayer chaplain available following today's service. And you can find the prayer room just out in the fellowship hall, up the stairs and down the hall. It's a beautiful space. Today's prayer chaplain is Dawn. Please come forward and lead us in prayer.
Thank you. You can close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing that. Mother, Father, God, thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you for each and every one who's come out to share their wonderful spirit with us all. We pray for all those who couldn't be with us because of illness or some other reason. We thank you for every individual who's joining us online. or who's hearing this message later. We hold in special prayer spiritual gatherings everywhere in the world. We know there is one God and many paths to God. We hold in special prayer today Unity of Vancouver in Vancouver, BC, and Unity here in London. We thank you for the individuals who have prepared this day for us and prepared this message for us. We know that each and every one of us was meant to hear it, and we thank you for that. We know that this message is for us and for us to take to others. Amen.
And now for a message from the Daily Word, brought to you by Silent Unity. Spiritual journey. I continue my spiritual journey, one with Spirit. My life is a spiritual journey that began long before my birth. I'm on an eternal spiritual journey that leads me ever more deeply into an awareness of God's presence, awareness of oneness. Even when I have not been seeking, God has always been there. The psalmist asks, "Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence?" No matter how far I have thought I strayed, a renewed awareness of God has always been as near as my next thought. When I have felt stuck or even lost on my spiritual journey, many times the thought of God has helped me find my way again. As I continue my spiritual journey, I go with God, for wherever I am, God is. Where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? Psalm 139, verse 7.
You know, sometimes in our lives, the most important thing we can do is just sort of get out of the way, get out of our own way, and let Spirit do its thing, because we all know that we accomplish a lot more that way than if we're just slugging on by ourselves. So here's a tune by Eddie Watkins called "Get Out of the Way." Spirit, do its thing. What's the matter with
gift shop, looking at the wall that has all the miscellaneous sundries, you know, all the different things that you might have forgotten at home. And I'm standing there and I'm looking, and there's a fellow standing beside me and he's looking. And so I turned to him and I asked him, "What are you looking for?" He said, "I'm looking for gum." And we looked again, no gum. So I happened to have some gum. Shook out about 5 or 6 pieces for him. He had gum. I said, "Now only if they had earplugs, because my roommate snores." And we look, and then I look over and he's pulled out of his pocket earplugs. And I said, "Are they clean?" He said, "Yes, I carry them just in case." So I said, "Thank you." And we turned and walked out of the store. That reminded me of how our prayers are answered, right? The truth of that. And that our prayers are not just what we speak out into the universe, but they are the thoughts that we hold. Our thoughts are prayers. And so we are praying ceaselessly, as we have been asked to do. So I wanted to share with you today some messages from my trip to the village and the convention. And the theme for the convention was the same as we have for the year. Reverend Sharon, who's the chair of the board, set it up that way. She asked Unity to make it a theme for the year. And it's One Humanity, Many Stories. And we have been immersed in that as we've heard different stories about different faith communities. And coming up in the fall, we're going to hear personal stories of people's journey and how Unity has transformed their lives. So many stories. And the underlying idea was this, that if I knew your story, I couldn't help but love you. That was the underlying idea for the convention. If I knew your story, I couldn't help but love you. And I just know that's true. I know that's true. If I really know what you've been through, what experiences you've had, I couldn't help but love you. So today I want to share with you some stories. I'm going to share 3 stories. A story about Paul, a story about Pat, and a story about prayer. So before I went off to conference, I had been speaking to someone and they asked the question, why can't we get rid of that word God? Because Unity teaches something very different from what we grew up with. Yes? Yes. So we grew up with an idea of God as being something out there and someone that judges and punishes and gifts us and like a puppeteer shows us the way, gives us callings, and all of this kind of idea. And Unity doesn't see God that way. So why do we keep using that word? So they also commented that they thought Reverend Paul Hasselbeck, who is a metaphysician in Unity, highly regarded, that perhaps he was suggesting that he would like to see all Unities get rid of that word. So I went to the source. Paul is a friend. I took many classes from him over the years. And so here's a picture of him and I at the conference. And a couple of his books, Heart-Centered Metaphysics, and the new one, Use the Truth You Know, Unity's Principles and Premises. And so I said to Paul, Paul, what about this word God? What do you think? And he said, it's not so much exactly that we need to get rid of the word God. The problem is people's idea of God gets in the way of Unity's teachings about God. Yes? Does that make sense? That you've got this idea, so when I say God, you may well be, oh, that's the old God. What you talking about? That's the old God. And yet I'm talking about the new God, so to speak, the God that Jesus taught us about in the New Testament. And so Paul said that when he speaks to a group, he prefaces God before he speaks. So Myrtle talked about God as it, and as principle, and as God and Father and Abba. But what we mean is omnipresence. God is everywhere, omnipotent, all-powerful. and omniscient, all-knowing, all knowledge. That God is divine intelligence, and just like Myrtle directed that divine intelligence into different areas of her body for healing, we can do the same. We can do the same. God is principle. And principle is something that never changes. It always is, always was, always will be, and it's no respecter of persons. It's the same for everyone. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about God. And I'm trying to get my languaging to use less God, more divine intelligence, more divine mind, universal love, all of those qualities of God. We try to use that languaging, but you know, I'm human, and I slip back into God, and I sometimes say, oh, God, please. But I know that's not the prayer. We pray affirmatively here in unity. So then I asked him, so Paul, what about the prayer for protection? What do you think about that? Because I think, you know, it doesn't really say it. The light of God surrounds me. The love of God enfolds me, and so on. It's up there talking. And he said, yes, it's a half-truth. It's a half-truth. It's a mystery. Okay. We're having lots of sound and visual challenges. So I thought I would find out the history of the prayer for protection. So I looked through a Unity website, and it shared an article where James Dillett Freeman, the author of the Prayer for Protection, talked about the history of the prayer for protection. So in 1940, Silent Unity came to James, and they asked him to create a prayer service, a Christmas prayer service for the Unity employees, which was normal, and because they always did that. And so he thought, you know, it's 1940, World War II, maybe we need some kind of a prayer for protection. So he created a prayer. And the prayer looked like this. The light of Christ directs me. The love of Christ enfolds me. The power of Christ protects me, and the presence of Christ upholds me. And so this is what he came up with, and they said, yeah, that's great. And then they wanted him to write a booklet and include prayers for protection. And this booklet was going to be distributed far and wide. So James thought, well, if that's the case, we need to take out the word Christ and put in the word God. Why? So that it would appeal to a wider audience, a wider Christian audience. I love what someone told me, that unity is an alternative approach to Christianity. I like that description. So he wanted to have this prayer accepted. The prayer for protection has actually, it's the prayer that has been printed more than any other prayer that Unity has printed. And it's spoken in Unity churches all over the world. And so that was the 4-line prayer. And then they came to him and they wanted him to create something that, in another booklet, something else. And so he created, or he included, suggested the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is there. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. And the associate at the Silent Unity said, you know, I don't think that we should use that. And he's like, you can't use the 23rd Psalm? Like, that's a really, you know, that's powerful. She said, no, because I think a woman in England who is in a town that's being bombed, or a soldier who is holding a gun and someone's holding a gun towards him, doesn't want to be thinking about the valley of the shadow of death. So they adopted this prayer in its changed form. But then he came up with the 5th line in 1943, which is, wherever God is, I am. And so the prayer changed. So Paul and I were talking about how this is really a half-truth. And so at the end of our service today, beginning today, we're going to speak the whole truth, okay? And the whole truth looks like the love of God enfolds us. I am love. Because we talked about we are divine spiritual beings. And so we need to claim that. We need to speak the whole truth. And I believe that James Stillett Freeman would be quite fine with that, because the prayer for protection went through a number of revisions before it got to where it is, and then he kind of watered it down a bit so that it appealed to a wider audience. But the Christ was where he was really focused. I love what Reverend Michael Moran wrote. If unity is to be relevant today, we must grow beyond our founders, as wise and wonderful as they were. Unity was never meant to be a museum where we try to preserve what was. Unity was meant to be a spiritual laboratory where we boldly discover new and wonderful truths and engaging ways to present them. Yeah. So we want to be progressive. This is Pat Clarkson, and I spent time with Pat at the village. Pat had completed the 3-year ministerial program, and she had come to the village. She had all her plans were made and paid for well in advance for licensing and ordination, the interviews that the students would go through before they were ordained on the Monday of the conference week. And Pat was telling me a story of her ministry. So after you do the schooling, you do internship. And so she's been out in Unity of Victoria, and she has been the interim minister there. And so Pat was telling me that one day she was sitting in her office at Unity of Victoria, and the front of the building has this huge awning over it. And because it's in the downtown area, homeless people shelter for the night under this large awning. And she said one day she's sitting in her office, and like mine, there's a window that looks outside, and she saw a woman clutch her body and sink to the ground, sobbing and sobbing. Now, Pat's first thought was, how do I get out of here? Because I'm afraid of homeless people, she said. I don't know what to do. I wanted to run from the window so she wouldn't see me. And so if I didn't go out there, she wouldn't see that I didn't help her. But then another thought followed that. Pat, you can do it. So she got some Kleenex, unlocked the door, went outside, and she asked the woman if she would like Kleenex. And the woman took the Kleenex without looking up, didn't make any eye contact. And Pat's like, she was just in such pain, screaming and crying. So Pat, in her work clothes, just decided to sit down on the sidewalk and sit with this woman. She sat for about 10 minutes, and then she asked her, she just commented, wow, you are in so much pain. And the woman looked up. And it was at that moment that Pat realized it was a young girl, about 18 years old. And the young girl looked at Pat and asked her, are you from this church? And Pat said, yes. And the young girl said, well, I don't understand how you can say that Jesus died on the cross for my sins and to save me, but save me from what? This life is awful. People are mean. I don't understand. And Pat responded, well, we see that differently. We see that God is in everyone, everywhere, no matter what you do or how you look. And we say that the Christ consciousness is in each person, and that in some, it's asleep. So the girl looked up and she's like, so you mean our souls need to wake up? And Pat said, yes, you could say that. So they sat for a little while longer, and the girl told her she felt she could never be a good enough daughter, and one thing and another that had led her to the street. And Pat had to leave, and so she had asked her if she'd want coffee. She'd got the coffee for the two of them. And so the young girl was still drinking her coffee, and Pat said, would you like to keep the cup? And the girl said, really? Oh, having my own cup would make such a difference. So Pat was telling this story on her Sunday, and there was a homeless woman sitting in the back row, and she'd come out for 2 or 3 weeks now, and Pat was telling the story, and in part to explain to the church why they were missing a cup. And so she said that when they were holding hands and singing the peace song at the end, this homeless woman started to charge for Pat. She was breaking through the hands, trying to get to Pat. And when she got to her, she put her hands on Pat's face and she said, "You saw her. You saw her." I said to Pat, you were giving her the ministry of presence, that young woman. The ministry of presence. She'd never heard that before. She said, "I know what divine love now looks like when we reach out to people." Pat decided from that experience to not get ordained. And so she was at the village, but she didn't complete it. She didn't get ordained because she decided her calling was to work with homeless people. And she said when she was going to also leave Victoria at the end of the summer, and she was going to move to Saskatoon, her hometown, buy a house. And the other thing she was going to do, aside from working with the homeless, was go to the Humane Society and adopt the oldest, biggest dog she could. And she was just going to love it literally to death. And when that one died, she'd go and get the next one. Oh, she just touched my heart. Just touched my heart. She was really modeling divine love. She said when she was sitting on the sidewalk with that young girl, a woman who was well-dressed, walking a dog, going by, got as far away from her as they could. And she said, "That was me. That used to be me." So she really had an awakening. She had an awakening. So my message there is divine love is our nature. We can always share it anytime, anywhere. And whenever we are with someone and we don't know what to say or do, just know that you are giving them the gift of the ministry of presence. You're just being present with them. And that's good enough. Well, prayer. They showed a movie at the convention called A Prayer for Compassion. I should bring this with me. Prayer for Compassion. And the filmmaker was there. And the film was about how our world raises animals for eating and how we butcher them and so on. The filmmaker said he had to walk a very fine line between wanting to educate people and not wanting them to run out of the theater. I think maybe some of you have had that experience where you might have seen a movie like this and wanted to run out of the theater. He said, "My clips of what's actually happening are about 2 seconds long." Well, I just cried through the whole thing. Why did we have that movie? So why did we have that movie? Well, because there was a focus on spiritual compassion. And the question was, how can we be spiritually compassionate to just humans, to just our pets who we love dearly, but not to the cows and the pigs and the chickens? How can we do that? There wasn't any blame. There wasn't any judgment of people that eat meat and those that don't. It was about education. Let's educate people. And then they can make, guess what? Educated decisions and choices. So did you know that livestock now use 30% of the Earth's entire surface? That they eat 80% of the world's grains. 80%. Just think about the people who don't have food. 80%. And globally, 18% of greenhouse gas emissions can be attributed to the livestock industry. So why was it part of our convention? Because we're looking at spiritual compassion for all. Because we're looking at a saying that a lot of our churches have adopted, and we have a sign on our wall that says, "A world that works for all." It doesn't say a world that works for some, a world that works for all. It's a part of our heritage. Did you know that Charles and Myrtle Fillmore were vegetarian? And Charles wrote 135 articles about vegetarianism. And the first vegetarian restaurant in Kansas City was a Unity restaurant. And they had a bus, the Unity group had a bus that went around the downtown in Kansas picking up the business people and dropping them back or bringing them in. It was a huge restaurant, it was like the Inn today, and fed a lot of people. So I like this quote, "Universal love is indiscriminate, without boundaries. When we love universally, there are no others unworthy of our consideration." So, that's a tough one. It's a tough one. I am vegetarian. After watching that movie and seeing how they actually get cow's milk, I decided I'm going to be vegan. No dairy. And I'm not going to tell you how they do it, but if you want to know later and you don't know, then please ask me, I'll tell you. Because I think we have to speak truth. I think we have to really not run out of the theater, not run away from the truth. Because I really believe if we knew what was happening, we would make different choices. And people that decide not to change their, from eating meat, that's okay too. Because we're not here as Unity to change that. But it came up as a discussion that is starting to go through the movement, this discussion, because it's our heritage, and we don't want to hide from it anymore. So, we want to speak the truth. Does that make sense? Yeah. We want to make educated choices. So in the next few months, we might offer some classes or just do some work around this, and those that would like to know more will have that opportunity. Those that don't, that's okay too. We love you and bless you and appreciate you just the way you are, just where you are. But to be educated, I think we all want to be educated. We want to make educated decisions. Okay, so let's take this into meditation.
Surely the presence of love is in this place. I can feel its mighty power and its grace. I can hear the brush of angels' wings, see glory on each face. Surely the presence of love is in this place. Surely the presence of love is in this place. I can feel its mighty power and its grace. I can hear the brush of angels' wings, see glory on each face. Surely the presence of love is in this place.
So we move into a configuration, a stance, a seating that tells our body it's time. We just want to move into that place of be still and know. Be still and know. Take a deep breath in and we let it out. Close our eyes, relax our shoulders down. Just be comfortable. Maybe have your hands, palms up on your thighs or in a mudra, which I can't show you because I've got the microphone. But just be. I was sharing in the pre-service meditation that sitting in the prayer vigil chapel at Unity Village, where there's prayer 24 hours a day, there's always someone in the chapel, every moment of every day. But the wall, this beautiful curved wall in the front, just has those words, peace, be still, and know. And what are we to know? The nature of our being. That we are hot-wired for compassion. That we can express our compassion wherever we go with everyone, humans, animals. Everyone is deserving of our compassion and our love. That we are magnificent expressions of the divine, equipped with everything we need for a happy, healthy, successful life. That we are divine intelligence at our very nature, and we can direct that intelligence to those parts of our body that are going through changes, that are maybe experiencing some kind of illness. So we direct that energy right there, and we affirm the wholeness and the truth of our spiritual selves manifesting in this outer physical flesh body. Myrtle Fillmore healed herself in 2 years of tuberculosis, and Charles Fillmore had a healing of his foot and his leg as well. And we can too. Jesus healed, and he said, "These things I do, you can do too." So for a moment, just let your attention drop into that area of your body where there might be some kind of dis-ease. And just say to yourself, divine intelligence, I guide it to that area. And I see that area illuminated with the light of the Christ. My divine nature, whole, healed, and healthy. Let's just sit with that place in our body and knowing the truth of it. divine intelligence is my divine nature. And I can speak into the truth of this at any time. And the more often that I direct that energy to a particular place in my body, healing is stimulated and quickened. And so I take a deep breath in and I let it out. And finish with the affirmation, I am divine. Together, I am divine. So it is.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah,
Thank you so much, Rev Lori, for your message. It's nice to get lessons back from the village, and so nice to see you enthused and passionate about new learning that comes out when you're on a conference like that. And I'm sure we'll all take this forward in our own spiritual journeys. Now it's our time for giving and receiving our tithes and offerings. Our unity principles teach us that we are one with God, Source, and so we give not to Source, but as Source. Giving has been described as a spiritual practice of radical generosity, insofar as the intent is to be an extension of spirit, tithing to what we wish to see flourish. Tithing as Source is God in expression. At the back of the sanctuary, you will find intention cards. These may also be placed in the offering bag. This week, our prayer angels will uphold your intentions for what you wish to achieve, either as a plan for your day or for your life. Now let us affirm our prosperity together by singing our offertory blessing.
Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And so it is. I'd like to read just the first verse of this song for you. This is a tune by Chuck Pyle, who's a very well-known composer of this kind of music. Now, the first verse, it just really speaks to me. It said, there's an old ancient saying in the wind, one must only take a first step to begin. You're on your way, you've done the hardest part. Now make your journey with a generous heart. Sounds like a nice way to live your life, doesn't it? There's an old ancient saying in the wind, one must only take a first step to begin. You're on your way, you've done the hardest part. Now make your journey with a generous heart. Step by step, side by side, hand in hand, so neighbors side by side. Someone and we've broken our stride, but they're all worn out from temporary pride. We're gonna put on when we run to run a race in which no one can lose. Step by step, side by side, hand on hand, this whole world's a better ride. Step by step, side by side, take a little step with the neighbors side by side. If you see me falling down, jump to it hand. It goes around, comes around, and round and round, yeah. If you run to another for help, don't mean you can't do it for yourself. Yeah, the neighbors know that if they need help, you know where to go. Step by step, side by side, hand in hand, this whole world's a better ride. Step by step, side by side, take a little step with the neighbor by your side. If we understand the heart's one true power, then nothing we see is really ours. From a satellite we all look like one. Our world time will finally have gone. Step by step, side by side, hand in hand, this whole world's a better ride. Step by step, side by side, take a little step with the neighbor, take a little step with the neighbor, take a little step with the neighbor, side by side.
Okay, let's bless our offering. So we go to our heart space, we feel gratitude. The gratitude of knowing that the universe is abundant and supplies our every need. And so we bless the givers of these gifts, both here in the sanctuary, those that give by mail and those that give online. We bless all of the givers and know that this ministry uses these gifts in a wise, wise way. For the highest and the greatest good of this ministry, the people who show up, and then the effect they have on people in their life, and it's like a ripple effect. So we are here for good. So we say, Amen. Amen. Yes. So let's stand and sing our peace song.
Peace on earth and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as creator, family all are we. Let us walk with
we have a very special guest next week.
Give her a shake.
We have a special guest next week, and it's Dr. Marissa Pye, and she's the author of 8 Ways to Happiness. She's coming to us from Toronto, but really she's just there visiting her mom. She comes to us from the Agape Church with Michael Beckwith in California. And she sings with the Agape Choir. She's going to be our musical guest as well. So I think it'll be a powerful day. And so I hope that you'll show up, tell your friends. She'll have her books available, and she'll just be a delight, I think, I hope. She sounds like it. And today she's speaking at Unity Kitchener, so we were able to get her to come for her last Sunday that she'll be in the area. So that's Dr. Marissa Pye, 8 Ways to Happiness. So let's speak our new prayer for protection. But let's let it be a call and response. So I'd like to call the first line and have you affirm the powerful affirmation. The light of God surrounds me.
I am the light.
The love of God enfolds me.
I am the love.
The power of God protects me.
I am the power.
And the presence of God watches over me.
I am the presence.
Wherever I am, God is.
I am divine.
Yes, that is the truth. Okay, and Jim is going to sing the solo part of this before we sing. Okay, can we let him do that?
Yeah, Red Warrior wanted to make sure that we got this message across, and I'm with her. I think it's really important. But when it's time for you to get in there, you'll hear the drums come in, and let's really rock this gospel. There was a time in my life, thought I'd have to do it all for myself. Didn't know the grace of God was sufficient. Didn't know the love of God was in hand. Now I can say, if you are discouraged, struggling just to make it through another day, you gotta let go, let it all go. And this is what you have to say. I believe and I know the Spirit of my life, and my heart is open wide, 'cause I'm only here for God. No more struggle, no more strife, if I think I see the light. I am free in the Spirit, 'cause I'm only here for God. So let's do that again. I believe and I let go, with the Spirit of my life, and my heart is open wide, 'cause I'm only here for God. No more struggle, no more strife, if I think I see the light.